Hello, citizens, and if you are not a citizen, hello, illegal aliens. Welcome to Sunday School Bonanza, a This Week in Mormons production. We're here, we're going to talk about a gospel doctrine.
Undocumented listeners, Jeff, that's what you should.
Or green carders, whatever. Whatever you are, whichever country you're in. We're all united by one faith. That's the beauty of it, everybody. I'm joined by Bill Doolittle. He's the one chortling over there.
I had a chortle. I'm sorry I didn't wait for my introduction.
Couldn't help. No, you're fine. You can jump on any time you want. We're in lesson 32 of the Old Testament Gospel Doctrine Manual. It's called I Know That My Redeemer Liveth. Very generic name for a lesson. It's not an SEO-friendly name. If you were trying to find stuff on Job, anyone in Scriptures could say, I know that my Redeemer liveth.
I guess it's just the one line out of the entire book of 42 chapters that got turned into a hymn.
Yeah, I guess so, huh?
So maybe that's the part everybody's going to know.
Fair enough. Job's a good book. The lesson is interesting, and we'll get to some of the details of it, because we discussed this, trying how do we tackle it. And there's no perfect approach. It's not like a linear narrative or anything. I mean, you can tell the story of what happened to Job. A lot of people know that already.
That's right.
At least they think they know it. And so I think you're just rehashing. If we were to go through all the things like why he was good, what he lost, I mean, there's elements of that are important.
Right.
But and we'll get to that. Attention activity, by the way, mentions basically Elder Worthland once talked about a Mexican white bean.
Mexican white bean.
That grows in very arid conditions, in very hot weather.
115 degrees.
Fahrenheit.
It
says Fahrenheit in the manual. And but it has roots that are like 6 feet deep to grow this little bean so that it can survive. It gets past the sandy topsoil and really gets in there. And so the point is, that we could be like this bean. Be strong. Be like Job. Job was unwavering. That's the point. I will say Job was unwavering.
Yep.
But Job was not perfect.
Certainly not.
And I think that's what we want to talk about today, because I think we all agree that we too often deify Job almost in a sense, as if he was a perfect being who was righteous and good and he didn't err necessarily, but he definitely lamented. He definitely was frustrated, I think you could say, with everything that happened to him.
Yeah, there's a certain fundamental way in which he did not err, but there are other things that he does. I mean, he makes all the mistakes a lot of us make when we're suffering like he did.
Yeah.
And in fact, that story about the bean really kind of reveals the way in which the manual takes on the story of Job, which is the story of a man who was, Job is center stage. It's the story of a man who was tested in ways that none of us has ever really been tested, most of us anyway.
Fair.
And remains faithful and then is blessed for it, right? That's kind of the story as you look in the manual.
And that's the common one we always talk about.
Yeah.
But you have a disagreeing perspective.
Well, I don't know that I disagree with that. At a very high level, that is kind of the story of Job. But I think the point of the story of Job, and I was mentioning to you earlier, I was reading a history of Paul Johnson's History of the Jews, and when he talks about the story of Job, he mentions that it may even have been a story that was borrowed from Sumerians, from another civilization that the ancient Israelites encountered, and then it was adapted to sort of fit the particulars of the gospel.
Yeah.
And so I guess that the question of whether Job was a real person or not is sort of left up for grabs in the manual, and that's probably right. We don't know for sure whether he was or not. But
I think we generally say yes, but the scholars still...
But
still debate.
Either way, it doesn't really matter, right? I think if under the real story of Job is a story about all of mortality, why bad things happen, and what is the relationship between me being a good person, following the commandments, following the gospel, and the blessings or bad things that happen to me in this life, right? What's the relationship between those two? And what's God's role in administering all of that? Those are the big questions for Job that we're trying to get at in Job. So you have, I think it's important that he is set up, like you said, he's set up as a really good man.
Like we can go, he was a good man. He shunned evil, it says. I like that he was wealthy but not caught up in wealth.
Right.
So he was blessed, but that wasn't his thing. He wasn't, waving that around. He had good integrity. He was nice to others. He strengthened the weak. And he really esteemed the Lord. He was compassionate as well to other people, the poor, the lame, whatever it was. He even forgave his enemies. So make no mistake, Job was a very, very righteous, a very good man with a good head on his shoulders, understood plenty of gospel precepts and lived by them. He definitely walked the way he should have walked.
Yeah, he was so faithful that like he just did stuff to be extra sure he was on the right side with the Lord, so that he would give extra offerings. And he's like, maybe I don't need to give this offering, but maybe one of my kids sinned in some way that I don't know about, and maybe I just need to cover that, so I'm going to give an extra offering now. So he's, just really a really pious guy.
That almost seems Saul-esque, though, but that's okay.
Yeah, it could be a little pharisaical too, to rule around the rule.
Just to be like, oh yeah, more.
Yeah,
but it's okay.
Well, so he's a good guy. We got that. But Satan and the Lord have a conversation in which Satan comes to the Lord and said, "Hey, see Job," or actually Satan's around tempting people, and God says, "Look at all this. What are you up to?" And he says, "Well." Satan wants to challenge God, and God says, "Consider my servant Job. Look at this great guy down here. He's so faithful to me." And Satan says, "That's just because you're being easy on him. He's living a good life. Let me mess with him a little bit." And God says, "All right, go ahead." So he does, and he takes away all of his property, right? Kids die. The cattle are stolen or burned up in crazy accidents, or the whole thing.
And Job himself experiences physical illness. He has nightmares too. He can't, not just being sick, he actually can't sleep. So he's actually sleep deprived for ages as well. Imagine how that would. How do you?
And the Lord kind of lets Satan gets 2 bites at him. The first one is all of his stuff, and then he comes back and Job, having remained faithful, God says, "See what I tell you, Job remained faithful." And Satan's like, "Yeah, but you haven't really let me cause him physical pain," and then he messes with his body, and at that point, that's his.
It talks about worms growing in his sores,
boils,
and
a lot of gross stuff.
Yeah, so it's pretty harsh. I don't think I'll ever experience anything along those lines of actually losing effectively everything that one, at first glance, would call a positive.
Yeah,
everything, but then the one thing he did not lose was his faith
and his wife.
And his wife serves, I think, as a very interesting antonym in many ways. And we forget that his wife was succumbed very much to desires, to gripe. She basically told Job, why don't you just throw in the towel? This isn't even worth sticking around for at this point. And you see Job, imperfect as he was, still remaining faithful to his promises, faithful to the covenants he had made. His wife, on the other hand, was sort of drifting off into, you could almost say Sons of Ishmael, Laman and Lemuel territory, complaining about the wild ideas of their father, but in this case, her husband. So, and you really see that. You see that parallel very much, and imagine how that would feel too. Talk to anyone if you have a great burden in your life, and how much worse would that be if your significant other, the one person you've counted on, especially one with whom you have covenanted to be with, if that person had also, in one way or another, sort of betrayed you or put the brakes on in supporting you.
Yeah.
That would make it, I think, harder than anything else. I feel like we're very much designed as humans to weather very difficult storms as long as we have the support of the people closest to us. But when that support also goes away, that could make it so much more demoralizing than it would be otherwise.
And, not only his wife, but his friends. And Job brings together he basically brings together 4 friends. 3 are friends, and 1 is this younger guy. So you've got Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. And then you've got this kid, Elihu. And Elihu doesn't talk till the end of the book. But the other 3... and it's important to note for the story that the Temanites were known for their wisdom. This was a philosophical, contemplative people, and so this guy Eliphaz is kind of a representative of, if we're trying to understand. Job wants to understand what's happened to him, right? He's trying to figure this out. Why did all this bad stuff happen to me?
For sure.
So he brings in the brain trust. And these guys sit around and debate for pretty much the entire book why bad things happen to Job. And they talk a lot more than Job's wife, although they kind of come around to similar results. The themes that you're going to see in here are Job saying, well, I was a pretty good guy. I don't know if this was because I'm wicked. Maybe it was, but I was a pretty good guy.
Yeah.
And they're all like, dude, no, you must have sinned. Look at all this bad stuff that happened to you. So that assumes that bad things are happening to him because he wasn't perfectly faithful, right? That assumes a link between the two. And Job's response of, well, I was a pretty good guy, and his confusion over why this bad stuff would happen to him also assumes a link between his conduct, his righteousness, and whether or not he's blessed. So everybody's sort of making that assumption throughout throughout most of the dialogue in the book.
And that's interesting because how easy is it for us in our day and age, in a variety of belief systems, to assume that if you are wicked, you are fully condemned, or likewise, if you are righteous, bad things won't happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very easy mindset. That it's we're never promised that. We're promised that if we're righteous and we stay true to who we are and what we've promised to do, we'll be blessed in the long run, and we'll be stronger, and we'll come to understand plenty of other things. But we're not promised anywhere that we're not going to experience hardship.
Right.
No one has promised that. We're all going to experience hardship. In Job's case, I believe in the end, it did make him stronger. To go through all that and come out on the other side and be able to say, I went through all of that, and I did not shirk. I might have had moments where I did, like it says in 13, wherefore hidest thou thy face, where I lamented and I wondered. And I like that Job, we talked about, he gets his friends together to say, well, why is this happening to me?
Mm-hmm.
And we forget that Job openly asked why. Why is this happening to me? Why is all this happening to me? He didn't give up on anything, didn't throw in the towel, didn't jump out of the boat, but he just said, Lord, I don't understand. What did I do to deserve this?
Yeah.
And he never really gets the answer either.
He doesn't. He doesn't. But he gets a different answer, which forms sort of the middle section of the Sunday school lesson in the manual, which is, there are two parts of Job's relationship with God that are coming up here. One is, what is the relationship between God and the suffering that I have? Is he causing it? Why is it happening? And then there's the other part and Job never really gets an answer there and kind of flounders with his friends for an answer to that question. The other question is, what can God do for you while you're suffering, and your faith? What can it do for you while you're suffering? And this Job gets 100% right. He maintains his faith. He says, look, I've got all these boils. Even if I die and all the flesh comes off my bones, yet in my flesh will I see God.
Yeah.
He remains faithful, and his faith comforts him. He knows that, at least in his heart, he's trying to do what God wants. He complains a lot. He's like, why didn't you just kill me? I can't see how this has a point, right? There cannot possibly be a point to this. You shouldn't have created me in the first place. Like, he's pretty mouthy with the Lord. But he at least never turns his back on God as being in charge. He never curses God, right? He doesn't give into that. And so on that question, he's right. That's what faith does for us.
I very much view that relationship in the sense of, say, like a captain and a first mate sort of thing, where he might say, look, even in public, I won't disagree with you. But now in privately, I'm disagreeing with you. I don't get this. Why are we doing this? But you know what? I've also made a promise that I'm going to follow my orders.
Yeah.
And Job follows his orders. He sticks with it. He
sticks with it.
He does not issue his own orders or try to do his own thing, unlike everyone else around him, unfortunately.
So all of his buddies go through these two cycles where each takes their time in turn, and Job responds to them as they each offer up their ideas as to why this is happening to him. At the very end, Elihu, who's this kid, has been keeping his mouth shut, and he pipes up and says, I've been keeping my mouth shut the whole time because you're my elders and I want to be respectful, but you're all wrong. And then he gets up and starts to say, like, you cannot understand what's going on with the Lord. The Lord is better than you. You must be a sinner, and you just need to accept that. And then Elihu is interrupted by God himself, who comes down to give the concluding chapter and the concluding viewpoint to the question of what's going on here. Why is Job suffering so much?
What if that happened to us right now?
Man,
that'd be crazy.
You would get a lot of likes on your podcast. Anyway.
By the way, everyone, we have a visit from. Anyway.
Man, I don't think I'd ever get to guest host again. So the Lord shows up and says, look, you guys are thinking about this sort of in a very that assumed connection between your righteousness and what happens to you. Let me just take you up 20 million thousand feet, right? Let me give you a divine perspective on this. And it is that you just don't understand. And you can't understand the way that I'm managing the universe. You can't understand everything that goes into why I bless certain people at certain times, why I curse them. Like, you will never be able to get your heads around that. I'm God, and I created everything, and you need to sort of embrace the fact that I'm God and stop trying to, confine me to the way that you think about, quid pro quo and blessing and cursing as opposed, in that way. Yeah. You need to let me be in charge. That's what you need to know. And then after that message has been delivered, we get the conclusion, and almost to show him how quickly the Lord can turn things around, he turns it right around for Job.
And everything's fine after that.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating story, whether you want to call it a fable or an historical account, whatever it is. I think it presents a very compelling narrative for how we can all cope with adversity. And my biggest takeaway from it is that when dealing with hard times, it's not wrong to ask why. It's not wrong to be displeased with the situation.
That's right.
No, it's just a question of, well, you're still going to do what's right, or are you just going to be a schmo and be like, and I say God has betrayed me clearly, ergo I don't need to hold up my end of the bargain. I mean, for me, that's my biggest takeaway in that sense, because we're always going to endure hardship in one way or another. And I think the measure of us as disciples of Christ is just if we still keep our eye on the horizon and just keep going on, even if we have all the questions in the world. And we might put that in a Latter-day context. You have plenty of people here, even with their faith can be rocked in a number of ways, in this very similar ways. I mean, this might have been a lot of tangible, temporal things that were taken away from Job, right? But you could go through a complete trial of faith. And so we're going to be better off by collapsing in that sense and assuming that, no, this can't be true, or just keeping your faith and keeping on and going forward and trusting that God has a better plan and understands things better than we do. And it cracks me up how easily as mortals we often think that we have things figured out better than the Lord, which is a human nature, I guess. But it's
we so often demand that he makes sense to us, and he just doesn't have to.
And not everything always makes sense.
Yeah.
Someday it will all make sense. Not everything's even been revealed to us, people, so got to be patient. Big timeline here.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, Bill, before we wrap up?
I think that's it. If Job existed, we thank him for his example to us.
We do. So, Job, good job, buddy.
Good work.
Hope you're watching. Everyone, hope you'll go visit us at thisweekinmormons.com and send us an email at contact@thisweekinmormons.com. Find us on Facebook and Twitter and other outlets. YouTube listeners, thank you for that as well. Please subscribe on there. If you listen to this on Stitcher or iTunes, please leave a review. It helps us grow immensely. And Bill, we thank you very much for stopping in once more at the Sunday School Bonanza. The Bonanza.
Thank you for having me,
partner. We appreciate your erudition and elucidation.
Ooh, I'm going to have to look those up.
On these topics. Everyone have a great Sabbath. Make the most of your Sunday. We hope this is useful for you, and we hope you'll tune in.